Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you doing today? I'm out of town this week, so we're talking about startups, specifically my new startup. And today we're going to dial in on a little bit of your questions about my new startup. So the big question that I've got is why not insert blank JavaScript template engine? Why are you using PHP? Why? I would love to know more about your stack. For those of you who aren't aware of what a stack is essentially everything that information flows through to get from the server to you or the PC to you, however it works out. This software that I have created is client-server based, which means that the software sits on a server, you're logging into the server remotely and executing against that server, and it's returning information to you. So when I go to sell this product to a school system or a business or whoever it is I'm going to seek out, they're not buying the software. They're buying access to the software. It's essentially a subscription model. So the stack that I have chosen is very simple. And the reason I've chosen it is because it's essentially the web host default, right? You have some version, some flavor of Linux running your web server, which is typically Apache. Apache is connected to some sort of database, probably Marion, which is a flavor of MySQL. It's functionally identical. And on top of that, you need some sort of scripting language. I chose PHP. Those four things are what's known as a LAMP server. That took way too long. A LAMP server, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Yeah, LAMP server. You can also have a WAMP server, which is Windows, Apache, whatever. The LAMP setup is kind of the default stack on the majority of web hosts around the world. So it's just kind of what I fell into, right? In the beginning. The beginning being way back when I decided it was time to learn about how to do this. It's not like I said, I'm starting this new business, I should learn how to code, and went from there, researched my options. It started years ago when I decided that I wanted to learn programming and web hosting and that sort of stuff. So let's start a decade ago. A decade ago, I took a course in college about HTML and CSS. It was the only course in the entire time I spent in college. I got an IT degree after being an IT professional for years. I finally decided to go get a degree, and most of it was complete junk garbage that I learned in the first day of my work. But the HTML CSS class was really eye-opening. I knew how to make websites. I've always known how to make websites since I was a kid. Before the internet came out, I was learning about all these new technologies, and HTML, it was one of those things that just happened, and I learned it, and I kind of filed it away because I didn't really need it. I used a lot of just click and drag services, even way long time ago, GeoCities, if you remember that. Most of the websites that I built, I used some sort of content management. So when I learned about this HTML and CSS stuff, when this new fancy stuff that I learned about a decade ago, I fell into it and was like, this is awesome. And I made a lot of websites using HTML and CSS. My personal website, CheveeDodd.com, for the longest time was completely hand-coded by me. And, at that time, cell phones were smartphones, but most people were still not. There wasn't 3G at that time. There was like 2G and 1G. And I was still on this 90s, late 80s, early 90s programming mantra of like keeping it simple so that the client can keep it as responsive as possible. And so in the early aughts or the late aughts on a cell phone, if I had a templating engine trying to build my pages out dynamically, it was a nightmare. So I decided to build my own website from scratch and not use any back-end templating, front-end templating, anything. Just raw HTML, CSS. And I did that for years. And my website was super responsive. It worked great. Never had any complaints about things smashing together. You know, I built the CSS myself. I completely structured that website myself. And so I used that code. That essentially became my boilerplate for future websites. And I sold a lot of future websites to people. I built websites for companies, promotional websites, that sort of stuff. And I used that boilerplate all along. And I started off this particular venture using that boilerplate. It has turned into its own setup, but I didn't see a need to rewrite it because some templating engine could do it dynamically. I don't need it to be done dynamically. My template is automatically responsive. I've built it over the years to be more and more responsive on mobile, on desktop. So I already had essentially a template built. The website is so simplistic, and I'm going to show it to you some tomorrow. It's mostly broken, but I can show you at least screen caps and walk you through how it works. But it's so simplistic, so minimal, that I didn't see a need to have any grandiose templates, you know, dynamically building. And people say, what about scalability? I don't want scalability. I've built this entire company, this entire software package on the selling point of simplicity. All right. And we'll talk about that tomorrow when I show it to you. The idea is that as simple as this software can be, no, that's not what I'm going to say. The simplest I can make this software means that it has that much more potential for being used, right? If you have to jump through 100 clicks and finding menus and doing this stuff just to enter one little piece of data into a database, you have failed your users. So this software goes from you log in, you click 3 clicks, and you've done what it is you were supposed to do that session. And I don't want it to be any more than that ever. So, am I writing myself into a hole choosing PHP? Possibly. The reason that I use PHP is because I know it, and it works very well for the way that my software has been designed. There is one page, essentially there's an admin screen, an admin kind of console that is built based on user level and stuff like that, that could serve to be used, using Ajax on that page would be better? Question mark? Like it makes sense, and you'll see it tomorrow, and I'll point it out. It would make sense to have some JavaScript talking to my database on that one particular page, because there is a lot of information, and it would be much nicer if it was updated as the user was making changes. But I don't know. This software is going to go out into the world with very little training, very little anything, and to give people the power to talk to my database live means it scares me. So having PHP on the back end running, it just works. And there's a whole lot of hate on the internet for PHP. You can search up, go to the subreddit LOL PHP and read all the stuff. Read all these. Oh, look at this bug. It's so stupid, and I don't get it. Like, the language has been around since the 90s, and it's been around for a damn good reason, because it's a damn good language. It works. If you're trying to, write a next generation gaming engine in PHP, then you're doing it wrong. That's not what it was made for. PHP was made to supplement HTML, not be, the end all be all solution for you to write your wildest dream web app. It is a very simple scripting engine, and if you're writing very simple software, it's beautiful. It works great. The reason that I didn't use insert random JS, Angular, or Vue, or whatever, is because I hate them. I tried them. I looked at them, and yes, they can make things simple. You type in a few new data structures, and voila, you've built a really pretty web page. I don't like the way the code looks. It hides itself inside of the HTML, and if you're looking at it through Notepad, for instance, then it becomes broken. And yes, I do work on my code in Notepad sometimes. My code sits in my Dropbox, and if I update that Dropbox, it automatically pushes to my web server. And so that means that anywhere in the world I don't have to have any of my hardware, I don't have to have my IDE, I don't have to have anything. I can fix a bug by pulling up my code, editing it, hit save, it automatically gets uploaded to my server, and I'm good. And if I have to pull that code up and dig through to find these stupid little insert blank Java tags to figure out what it's a nightmare to look at if you're not using a well-structured IDE, and that bothers me. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. I just don't like it. I like the idea that my code is obviously separate from the page. And I write my code that way. Maybe I'll show you some code tomorrow. But if you know anything about PHP, if particularly WordPress, if you go look at a WordPress site code, their actual functions, they like to kind of, every line is bracketed in a script, and it becomes this weird thing to look at. I do not write my code that way. I use a lot of echoes, and I'll literally echo HTML just because I want it to look separate. I want to know that the script is doing this, and it's ugly as hell. And I'm probably, you'll probably laugh at it when you see it, but it keeps the code separate. The same way that we used to say, keep styling separate from HTML, which shouldn't say we used to, we still say it. Keep all of your styling separate. That goes in CSS. HTML is presentation. I like my code the same way. I like it to be obviously separate from the rest of the page. That's just me. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear if I'm crazy or if you have a better solution. Again, tomorrow I hope to show you some of the code. I hope to show you a little bit about how the website works. And yeah, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Doc, wait! I want to ask you something.
Today's random fact comes from Quora.com. Who coined the phrase "time is money"? The phrase was coined by Benjamin Franklin in his advice to a young tradesman, 1748. Remember that time is money. He that idly loses 5 shillings worth of time loses 5 shillings, and might as prudently throw 5 shillings into the sea.